In the darkness of the night, under a canopy of stars, a shadow moved silently through the village of Nyanda. It was Nia, the most admired woman in the land, known for her unparalleled beauty and ever-changing, exquisite hairstyles. But tonight, something was amiss. From her window, her closest friend Ao watched in disbelief as Nia's body gracefully braided her own detached head, the hands working with supernatural precision. Frozen in place, Ao's heart pounded as she whispered, "What secret have you been hiding, Nia?" In the heart of the great lowlands, where the winds rustled through tall golden grasses and the sun kissed the earth with a gentle fire, there lay the quiet village of Nueka. It was the kind of place where every hut had a story, every tree had seen something, and every villager knew the other's footsteps by sound alone. The people of Noka lived close to the earth, and even closer to each other. Their mornings began with the sound of pounding yam, children's laughter, and roosters calling to the sky. At dusk, drums echoed through the valleys as fires danced and old songs filled the air. And though the village had its share of hard-working women, brave men, and wise elders, there was one name that rolled off every tongue with awe. Her name was Nia. From the youngest child to the oldest toothless griot, everyone knew of Nia. She was not only known in Nyoka, but in all the neighboring lands beyond the Okit Hills and the wide Nyambiri River, when traders came to sell there. Wares kente cloth, honeyed cola, roasted plantains, they always asked the same thing before leaving. "Has Nia passed by yet today?" Nia was beautiful, yes, but it was not the kind of beauty that faded with dust or time. Her skin was deep and smooth like the bark of a well-oiled she-tree, her eyes a shade of dark amber that caught sunlight like fire trapped in honey. Her walk was gentle, her voice softer than the lullabies sung at twilight. But what truly made Nia unforgettable was her hair. Each week, her hair would appear transformed, more mesmerizing than before. On one day, it fell down her back in shimmering black waves, full and soft, dancing like water in the wind. On another, it was sculpted into high, intricate braids with beads that clicked and chimed like wind chimes as she walked. Then suddenly, she'd arrive at the morning market with her head adorned in elegant cornrows woven in patterns so elaborate that even the most skilled hair braiders in Noko would pause in disbelief. "How is it possible?" they whispered. "No one ever sees her getting it done. She doesn't visit the salon hut. No one has touched her head in years. Is it her mother? A secret friend? Spirits from the forest?" The speculation was endless. And Nia? She would only smile a smile that held both warmth and mystery, and say, "Ah, my sisters, it's just a little trick I've learned." Even the village elders, who prided themselves on knowing all secrets, could not explain it. The young women begged to learn her ways. The boys followed her like moths to fire, stumbling over their own feet. And the children, oh, the children, they followed her as if she were the sun itself, their tiny voices whispering excited guesses every time she passed. "Today it's fishbone braids." "No, it's goddess twists." "Maybe tomorrow her hair will turn into butterflies." To them, she was not just Nia, she was magic. And no one was more fascinated than her best friend, Ayao. Ao and Nia had been born in the same season. Their mothers had sung to the same moon while cradling them in calabashes of warm water. They had grown together like twin vines braiding each other's hair, stealing mangoes from behind the elders' gardens, and dreaming of faraway lands together under the watchful eyes of the stars. But now, as women, something had changed. They still laughed together, still shared roasted groundnuts by the river. But Nia was different. Not in her heart, no. That remained tender and true. It was the mystery. The growing space between what Ao knew and what she didn't. How could it be that her own best friend, someone she knew like her own shadow, held such a secret from her? How did Nia's hair change so perfectly each week when no one ever saw her styling it? And why, oh why, did Nia always dodge the question with the same teasing smile? One afternoon, as the village sky turned the soft color of palm wine before sunset, Ao sat beside Nia under the old flame tree. They had spent the day weaving mats together, their hands moving in rhythm as their laughter filled the air. As they rested, sipping chilled bishop and chewing on roasted maize, Io turned, her eyes toward Nia's crown. The braids were unlike anything she had ever seen. They spiraled into a central knot, shaped like a blooming flower, with threads of gold silk woven between them. No mortal hand in the village had that kind of skill. Ao's breath caught in her throat. "Nia," she said gently, "your hair. It's like art carved by the gods." Nia chuckled, brushing a loose strand from her brow. "You always say such things, but I mean it this time. It's not just beautiful, it's impossible." Nia's eyes twinkled as they met hers. "What are you thinking, Io?" Ao leaned in, her voice soft and sincere. "That I've known you since we shared a cradle. That we've told each other every story, every secret. Except this one." There was a pause. A flicker crossed Nia's face. The kind of flicker that lasts only a moment, but speaks 1,000 truths. Something between sadness and warning. Then she smiled again. "Some things," she said, "are better not spoken." Aloud. That night, Ao could not sleep. She lay on her mat, staring up at the thatched ceiling, listening to the calls of night creatures. Her mind spun with questions. The mystery consumed her, more than it ever had. Something in Nia's eyes had shifted something that made Ao's skin prickle. It was no longer just curiosity. It was concern. That very week, whispers began to trickle through the village. The old ones, those with backs bent like sickles and eyes clouded by time, muttered amongst themselves at the river. They had seen shadows behind Nia's hut. Not animal shadows. Not the usual nighttime flutter of bats or owls. Human shadows, but not moving like humans. One said she saw Nia walking with no head. Another swore he saw something floating above her home, something with braids of smoke and skin like mist. Of course, no one dared to speak too loudly. Number. One wanted to offend the beautiful one. No one wanted to believe something so unholy could be true. But Ao had heard them, and something inside her twisted like a vine in storm. She decided she would find out the truth with her own eyes, even if it meant spying on her best friend, even if it meant discovering something she wasn't ready to see. Later that night, the forest was breathing. It moved and sighed with every gust of wind that danced through the tall trees. Crickets chirped in rhythmic bursts. Frogs sang from the wet riverbank, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called out, low and haunting. But Ao heard none of it. She was crouched low behind a thick nicuba tree, her heart pounding so violently it felt as if it might tear through her chest. The bark scraped her skin, but she didn't dare move. Her eyes were locked on what stood only steps away in the clearing, a scene so impossible her mind refused to believe it. There, beneath the glow of the moon, her friend Nia's body moved without a head. The head Nia's own was cradled gently in her arms like a sleeping infant. Its eyes were shut, serene, as if in a dream. But the fingers, oh, those fingers were alive, weaving and twisting strands of hair with a rhythm that felt ancient. The braids grew longer, tighter, more intricate with every passing second. No human could braid with such speed or elegance. The wind lifted the scent of hibiscus oil from Nia's hair, mixing it with the earth's musty aroma. The air shimmered with a strange energy, part sacred, part terrifying. Io's legs trembled beneath her. Her breath was shallow, uneven. every fiber of her being screamed for her to run, to leave that cursed sight behind. But she didn't. She couldn't. She needed answers, not for the village, not for gossip, but for her heart. Then, crack, a twig snapped under her foot. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence. Mia's hands stopped. Her head, still detached, jerked suddenly. The eyes flew open, wide and glowing with a pale golden light. They scanned the forest like a predator sensing prey. Ao ducked quickly, pressing herself flat against the trunk. Her hands flew to her mouth, muffling the gasp that escaped. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, louder than the wind. Had she been seen? Seconds stretched like hours. Stillness. No sound. Then, with the corner of her eye, she watched Nia's body slowly turn, holding the head aloft. The half-braided hair swayed in the night breeze like the tendrils of a spirit. The face was expressionless now, calm again, searching, listening. Io dared to peek once more. After what felt like an eternity, Nia turned back toward the mirror propped against the tree. Slowly, the braiding resumed. Whatever force had possessed her was calm again. Ao didn't wait. She crawled backward through the underbrush, her breath trapped in her throat, her limbs numb. Leaves scratched her skin, and roots grabbed at her ankles like tiny hands. But she kept moving until she was far from the clearing. She didn't stop until she reached the village's edge. Only then did she exhale and cry. The next morning, the sun rose like nothing had happened. Birds chirped, fires crackled, and the scent of porridge drifted on the wind. But Ao? She was different now. She sat outside her family's hut, her body still, her eyes haunted. She barely touched her breakfast. Her mother noticed, but said nothing. The elders passed her and nodded respectfully, sensing something amiss but not asking. Ao kept replaying the scene in her head, over and over. The detachment, the hands, the glowing eyes. How? Why? Was it magic? A curse? Had Nia made a deal with spirits? Was her beauty the price of something unholy? Ao had questions, too many questions, but no answers. Only one thing was clear. She couldn't pretend anymore. She needed to get closer to Nia, closer than ever. That afternoon, Ao found herself walking the familiar path to Nia's hut. Her heart was beating hard again, but she masked it with a practiced smile. She carried a basket of guava and groundnuts as a friendly excuse. As she neared the hut, the sunlight filtered through the trees and caught something. It was Nia, sitting on a low stool outside, brushing her hair. The way it gleamed, it looked like threads of midnight stitched with silver. Nia looked up, smiling. Gently. Ao, she called. You look like you've seen a ghost. Ao forced a laugh. Maybe I have, she said, then quickly added, I was thinking, it's been ages since we had a sleepover, like the old days. Nia's hand paused mid-stroke. She said nothing at first, only tilted her head slightly. A sleepover? She repeated. Yes. Ao beamed, walking closer. Remember how we used to stay up, tell stories, eat roasted yam, and braid each other's hair under the lantern? For a moment, Nia's face seemed unreadable. Then she smiled again, softer this time, almost sad. It has been a long time, she said, but tonight I have things to do. Ao's heart sank, but she didn't give up. Just one night, she pleaded gently. Just us, no chores, no worries. I even brought roasted groundnuts, your favorite. Nia was quiet for a long time. She looked into Ao's eyes, deeply, as if trying to see her thoughts. Finally, she nodded. All right, she said, but just for tonight. Promise me, though, don't stay up too late. I need to rest. I promise, Io lied. Night came swiftly. The moon was high and the sky clear. Ao arrived at Nia's hut with a small bag, a blanket, a gourd of tamarind juice, and 2 small lanterns. Nia welcomed her with open arms. They spread out a mat, sat together, and shared stories from childhood. They laughed about the time they'd climbed the mango tree and got stuck. They giggled about their old crushes. They ate sweet plantain fritters and talked about dreams. But Ao was not relaxed. She watched Nia's every move, and as the night deepened, she noticed it, the restlessness, the way Nia's fingers twitched, the way her eyes glanced toward the back room again and again. "I think it's time to sleep," Nia said suddenly. Her voice was too firm, too final. "Of course," Io said, pretending to yawn. "I'm exhausted." They lay down side by side. The lanterns dimmed. Nia's breathing became steady, but Ao didn't sleep. She waited and waited until the room was dead silent. Then, barefoot and careful, she rose from the mat, her body trembling. She tiptoed through the dark hallway, each step slower than the last. At Nia's bedroom door, she pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing. Then the faintest rustle. A brush. A whisper. Of hair. She dropped to her knees and pressed her eye to the small crack between the doorframe. Her blood turned to ice. There was Nia standing before her mirror, her head once again held in her hands. The face was serene, the eyes closed, and the fingers braiding with impossible speed. Ao felt the air leave her lungs. Every part of her wanted to scream, to flee, but she watched, mesmerized. And then the head's eyes opened, wide, and stared directly at the door. Ao recoiled, heart slamming in her chest. Had she been caught? She scrambled back down the hallway, nearly tripping over her own feet. She dove beneath the mat, eyes wide open, her whole body tense. And just as she feared, she heard its soft footsteps. Approaching, stopping, right at her side. The shadow on the wall paused, stood, waited. Io did not move. She slowed her breath, heart pounding in her ears, praying to every ancestor she could name. After what felt like a lifetime, the shadow moved, back down the hallway. And the door creaked shut. Only then did Ao allow herself to blink. She had seen enough. She had confirmed the impossible. She waited until the very first light of morning touched the walls. Then she stood, quickly gathered her things, and muttered, "I have to help Mama with the cassava." Nia, already sitting in the main room, gave her a tired smile. "Of course," she said softly. "Come again soon." Io didn't answer. She simply left fast, the way a hunted thing flees into the forest. That day, Io wandered through the village like a ghost in daylight. Her hands shook as she peeled yam. Her eyes darted every time someone passed by. She burned the millet she was cooking. Her mother called her name twice before she answered. Her mind was still in that hut, still in that moment. The impossible had become real. She had seen Nia without her head. She had seen the body move. But why? And how? And more frightening than all, what did it mean? Each night after that, Io dreamed of Nia's severed head chasing her through the fields, laughing, the same laugh they had once shared as girls. She would wake drenched in sweat, gasping, clutching her chest as if to hold her soul in place. She avoided Nia after that. Every time they crossed paths, Ao turned away. She would claim she had errands, or that her mother was calling, or that her stomach hurt. At first, Nia didn't question it, but villagers began to notice. They whispered behind woven baskets and stirred pots. "Have you seen Ao? She's not herself. She avoids Nia now. Something must have happened. They used to be like 2 seeds from the same pod." It wasn't long before the whispers reached Nia's ears. And she noticed it too. The glances, the cold greetings, the shift in Ao's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was something else. Fear. One afternoon, Nia could no longer stand the silence. She walked down to the river, where Ao often fetched water for her mother. The path was lined with wildflowers, buzzing bees, and warm sunlight. But Nia felt no peace. She found Ao kneeling at the water's edge, filling a calabash, her back. Turned. Ao, Nia said softly. The sound of her voice made Ao's hands tremble. The calabash slipped a little in the current. She gripped it tighter but didn't turn. Nia took a step forward. Why have you been avoiding me? Ao's throat went dry. She stood slowly, turning to face her friend. Nia's eyes were wide and sincere, but behind them, something deep, something old, flickered like a storm held back. I haven't been, Ao said, forcing a shaky smile. I've just been busy. Nia stepped closer. No, something has changed. I feel it. I'm not a fool, Ao. You've seen something, haven't you? Ao tried to speak. The words clung to the back of her throat like wet leaves. Nia's voice softened. If there's something you know, something I should know, tell me. Ao looked down at her feet. Then, barely above a whisper, I saw you. Nia's brow creased. What did you see? I saw you without your head. Silence. A breeze passed between them, lifting Ao's skirt and fluttering the grass. Nia's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came. For a moment, her face looked frightened. Then her expression hardened. You shouldn't have seen that, she said quietly. Ao stepped back, heart pounding. What are you, Nia? What did you do? Nia looked away, her voice suddenly weary. Some secrets are better left untouched. For your own sake, Ao, please forget what you saw. Ao stared, her body tense. Nia's voice carried no threat, only sadness. She nodded slowly, but inside, her world had cracked open. That night, Ao sat with her mother under the mango tree behind their hut. Her mother was peeling beans, her fingers working quickly. Ao hadn't said a word all evening. Finally, her mother stopped and looked at her daughter. Your face carries a storm, she said. Speak. Ao hesitated. Then, in one long breath, she told her everything. The braiding, the severed head, the stiff movements in the night. She wept as she spoke, trembling with the weight of the memory. Her mother grew pale as the tale unfolded. At last she spoke, her voice thin with fear. You should not have gone looking for what hides in shadows. Mama, what is she? Ao whispered. There are stories, her mother said. Old stories, of women who made pacts with spirits from the deep forest. They were given beauty, power, but it came with a price. What kind of spirits? Hungry ones. Ones that live in the roots of ancient trees. Ones who demand your soul in pieces. Ao shivered. Is she dangerous? Her mother didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, she is still your friend, but something else lives beside her now. Ao sat in silence as her mother's words hung in the air like smoke after fire. Such deals come with a price. Ao, and that price is often far greater than any beauty is worth. Ao's voice came as a trembling whisper. What should I do, Mama? Her mother's eyes, always warm and wise, were now full of fear. Stay away from her, she said. Whatever you do, child, do not speak of this to anyone. Not the elders, not the children. Spirits hear whispers, and they do not forgive easily. Ao nodded slowly, but inside her, a storm had begun. She didn't sleep that night. Again. The next few days felt like watching someone drown in shallow water. Nia, her light, her laughter, began to dim. She stopped greeting the villagers with her radiant smile. She no longer passed through the market with her elegant stride. Her eyes, once full of playful mischief, now looked hollow, haunted. The children who used to chase behind her, admiring her hair, now kept their distance. Even the dogs that usually ran to her stopped short and turned the other way. Something was unraveling, and Ao could feel it. And then the dreams began. One night, Ao found herself walking through a dark, endless forest in her sleep. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky like bony fingers. The air was thick with fog and whispers, voices that spoke in tongues she could not understand. Then she saw them, figures in the mist, hooded and swaying. They formed a perfect circle, chanting low and slow. Their voices rose and fell like waves, each word a warning in a language older than memory. She stepped closer, her feet silent on the damp earth. One of the figures turned to face her, an old woman cloaked in gray, her skin wrinkled like the bark of an ancient baobab. Her eyes were black, but they glowed like embers. The woman's mouth moved, and her voice echoed not in Ao's ears, but inside her mind. Beware the magic that binds the hair. It comes from a spirit, one that takes more than it gives. If the bond is not broken, it will consume her, and you. Ao woke with a scream, sitting bolt upright. In the dark. At dawn, she did what she feared most. She went to see the only person who might understand, Mama Kenga, the village's oldest and most mysterious woman. No one knew how old Mama Kenga really was. Some said she had lived 100 harvests. Others whispered she had once walked with the river gods. Her hut stood at the edge of the forest, covered in climbing vines and dried herbs. Ao knocked gently, her hands shaking. Enter, came a voice like dried leaves on the wind. Ao stepped inside, the air thick with smoke and the scent of camphor, cassia bark, and old stories. Mama Kenga sat on a woven mat, her eyes sharp despite her age. I know why you've come, she said before Ao could speak. You've seen something, a truth wrapped in hair. Ao fell to her knees and poured out the story, every terrifying detail. Mama Kenga listened with closed eyes, nodding slowly. When Ao finished, there was silence. Then Mama spoke. Your friend's magic is not her own. It comes from a spirit, a forbidden one. It lives deep in the forest of Nefundo, where no bird sings and no fire burns. It offers beauty, elegance, and power in return for something precious. But the bargain is never equal. The spirit always takes more than it gives. Ao's voice was thin. Is there a way to stop it? Mama's eyes opened. There is always a way, child, but it is not without risk. You must confront her and the spirit. You must do it before the next braid is finished, or the bond will be too strong to break. Ao walked home, the weight of truth crushing her chest. She had tried to stay silent. She had tried to listen to her mother. But now she saw clearly. Keeping quiet meant watching her best friend vanish into something else, something hollow and haunted. She would not let that happen. That very night, as the moon hung low and golden like an old drum, Nia found her. They met again by the river, the place where their friendship had first bloomed, where they had once braided flowers into each other's hair. But tonight the air was tense. Ao, Nia whispered. You told someone. Her eyes were wild, her face pale. I felt it. The spirit's strength is fading. You've put us both in danger. Ao's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't. Keep it to myself now. It's too dark, too heavy. You're not the same. This thing, it's taking over you. Nia's jaw clenched. You don't understand. I can't go back to what I was. You were beautiful without it, Ao said, reaching for her hand. You were you. But I didn't feel that way, Nia whispered, her voice breaking. I thought this power would make me whole. Now, I don't know who I am without it. We'll find another way, Io said. We'll break the bond. Nia looked away, then back at Ao. For the first time in many nights, her eyes looked human. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Io said. And that was enough. The next day, Io stood in the center of the village square. She clapped her hands 3 times, just as the elders did when they had important words to speak. The villagers gathered, some with curiosity, others with concern. She told them everything. About the spirit, about the hair, about Nia's nightly rituals, about the warning from Mama Kenga. At first, there was silence. Then murmurs, fear, disbelief. But Mama Kenga stood beside her, nodding. The child speaks truth, she said. This spirit must be driven out before it takes more than just beauty. Together, they began preparations. They wove protective charms from dried inganga leaves and sacred river stones. They bathed in blessed herbs. They sang old songs meant to banish shadow things. They prepared to confront the power that had taken root inside one of their own. The sun dipped beneath the hills, leaving behind a sky drenched in crimson and fire. The village of Nuoka, once alive with chatter and the rhythm of pounding grain, now pulsed with an uneasy silence. Doors were shut tight. Smoke from cooking fires rose slowly into the evening air, curling like omens. Tonight was not an ordinary night. The people of Noka had gathered near the clearing at the center of the village. Old and young, men and women alike, all stood beneath the ancient baobab tree that had watched over them for generations. In their hands, they clutched charms, strings of dried inganga leaves, carved cowrie shells, river stones rubbed in red clay, all blessed by Mama Kenga, the wise woman. Their voices rose in low harmony, chanting old protective verses handed down through centuries. The words hung in the air like smoke, humming with power. At the front stood Ao, her face calm, but her eyes sharp as obsidian. Beside her stood Mama Kenga and 3 elder men. Their steps were slow, but their presence heavy. They were not here for revenge. They were here to break a bond. Inside her hut, Nia sat in silence. The candle beside her flickered wildly, its flame bending in protest. She had known this moment would come. The whispers in the air had changed. The spirit inside her hair had grown restless, anxious. It pulsed against her scalp, demanding a choice. They come to take me, it hissed in her mind. Will you surrender? Or will you keep what you asked for? Nia looked into the cracked mirror, propped against her wall. Her reflection looked back, not twisted, not monstrous, but hollow. Her hair flowed down her shoulders like streams of ink. It glistened, it shimmered. But she could feel the weight of it now, like chains, like vines from the forest of Mifundo wrapping around her soul. I never meant to harm anyone, she whispered aloud. I only wanted ... to feel beautiful. The spirit did not reply. Only the wind spoke now, and the chanting growing louder outside. She stood slowly. She would face them. Outside, the chants grew stronger as the villagers stepped closer to the hut. Ao stood at the front, her heart pounding like a drum of war. She had braided Nia's hair as a child. She had danced with her, laughed with her, wept with her. Now she might have to help break her. The door opened, and Nia stepped out. She was barefoot, wrapped in a flowing robe of dark indigo. Her hair moved behind her, but not by the wind. It twisted and curled like smoke, like it had a life of its own. Some villagers gasped. Others held their charms tighter. Mama Kenga raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Nia, she said, voice deep as a river. We know and we are here to help you let it go." Nia stood still, her eyes shining, with tears or with power. It was hard to tell. "I don't want to lose it," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to be ... ordinary again." The crowd murmured. Some eyes softened. Ao stepped forward. "You are never ordinary, Nia. It was never your hair that made you powerful. It was your spirit, the way you made people feel. You don't need this ... thing." Nia looked down. Her hands trembled. Then her eyes hardened. "No," she shouted suddenly. "You don't understand. I gave up part of myself for this. I bled for this." As she raised her arms, her hair lifted into the air, writhing like serpents, lashing out in a circle of wind and rage. The villagers staggered back. The ground trembled. A gust of wind swept through the square as Nia's hair twisted into spirals, forming symbols in the air. The spirit's presence had awakened fully now, hungry, furious. But Mama Kenga stepped forward, undeterred. She began to chant in the old tongue, words too old for books, words carried by fire and breath. The villagers joined in, their voices rising, layer upon layer. Ao stepped forward too, clutching a charm of woven goat hair and dried pepper seeds. "Nia," she cried, "you're stronger than it. Fight it." Nia staggered, her knees bent. Her eyes flickered, gold and brown and back again. The spirit screamed through her hair. It writhed violently, but the chants were stronger. The charms began to glow faintly. A light shimmered in the air, swirling in a wide circle around the crowd. Then suddenly snap, like a thread breaking. Nia collapsed to her knees. Her hair fell limp. The color drained from it, no longer shimmering, no longer alive. The wind stopped. The spirit's presence vanished in a final gust that rushed through the village, knocking over baskets, lifting leaves, and then gone. Silence. Only Nia's sobs remained. The villagers rushed forward. They knelt beside her, lifting her up gently. She looked different now, not ugly, not broken, just human. Her hair hung in thick, simple strands around her shoulders. No glow, no magic, just hair. "I'm sorry." She wept. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to be seen." Ao wrapped her arms around her friend, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You are seen," she whispered. "You always were." That night, the village fires burned brighter than ever. They danced, not in celebration of a victory, but in gratitude, for release, for truth, for community. Nia sat beside Ao, her head resting on her shoulder. Mama Kenga looked on with tired eyes and a soft smile. Balance had been restored. But scars, though invisible, remained. A few days later, Nia packed her belongings in silence. She had decided to leave Nuaka for a while, to journey, to heal, to discover who she was without the shadow of beauty bought with spirits. Io stood with her by the village gates. "I'll be waiting," Io said. Nia smiled, a real one this time. "You always were." They embraced. And then Nia walked into the horizon where the earth met the sun. And so ends the tale of Nia and the spirit of the forest. A story of friendship, of longing, of the dangers of giving too much for what glitters on the outside. What do you think? Should beauty ever come at such a price? Is it worth losing yourself for the world's gaze? Tell your thoughts below. And don't forget to share this story with someone who might need to hear it.